Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I don't want to give false hope.
Could the province relax the rules for people who've gotten the COVID-19 shot? Also,
everyone feels that calling the police is not an option.
A deadly attack on a U.S. spa hits close to home for BC sex workers. And
the Asian giant hornet is an apex predator.
they're a threat to BC's honeybees.
Oh, that's the queen?
How the province is trapping and destroying invasive murder hornets.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening and thanks for joining us. Well, nearly 450,000 British Columbians have now been vaccinated against COVID-19.
It's a relatively small number, but now the question is being raised, could those people start to let their guards down? Let's bring in our Tanya Fletcher for more on this.
Tanya, yesterday was a record day for immunizations here. Do we have any sense of whether rules could be relaxed for people who have gotten the shot?
Yes, possibly, and that's the first indication we've had on that from the province, and it came today courtesy of the Premier. He was asked exactly that today. Once I've been vaccinated, now what? Can I do anything different? Well, the U.S. Center for Disease Control, for example, has put out special guidelines for activities that only immunized people are now allowed to do. John Horgan wouldn't get into details for BC, but he did suggest British Columbians who have the shot are in a safer position to have more freedoms.
We will be making changes as more people get vaccinated. Those that have been vaccinated will have a bit more flexibility, of course, because they're less risk to the people around them, and the people around them are less risk to them.
He held back from giving any specifics on what those freedoms might be or when we might see them. But the health minister was asked a similar question yesterday about Prince Rupert in particular. It's undergoing a mass community vaccination as we speak. So what happens once the city is fully vaccinated? Could we see perhaps geographical easing of restrictions for any jurisdictions where the vaccine has fully circulated through the entire population? Adrian Dick says don't count on it.
Right now, we've got to dig in, even when you're immunized, and absolutely follow public health orders. I don't think a community such as Prince Rupert, which is the center of many other communities, I don't think we're going to have a special set of rules for there as opposed to other places.
And he points out it takes 2 to 3 weeks for that first dose to become fully effective.
Okay, the question we're hearing this the most from is family members with elderly loved ones, some of them in long-term care as well. So what about seniors? Yeah, so long-term care homes especially, they've seen the strictest measures over the course of the pandemic. And by now the vaccine has pretty much made its way through all of those facilities. So, when can residents start to see visitation rules relaxed? Well, that's something the head of the BC Care Providers Association is still asking. Look at this tweet from Terry Lake. He says, with vaccination of long-term care homes largely complete, why are our elders still being restricted? Let them socialize with other residents who are vaccinated. Let them sit together at meals. Whatever happened to quality of life? Now, Dr. Bonnie Henry has said they're developing plans around that, and more provincial guidelines for care homes will be coming soon. In the meantime, 1 o'clock tomorrow, we're expecting to get an update on which of BC's essential workers will be prioritized for the next shipment of the AstraZeneca doses. Anita, Mike?
All right, Tanya Fletcher with a live update tonight. Thanks very much. And once again, BC has set a new single-day record for vaccinations. But on a more subdued note, another 4 people have died in our province from the virus. Vaccinations are up 27% from the previous single-day record that was set yesterday. However, hospitalizations are also slightly up. The good news, active cases dropped about 150 from the last update.
And the province is expanding its grant program for businesses looking to expand online. The money was meant to help businesses improve their online presence to help offset losses from customers kept away by the pandemic. BC is now spending $30 million to help businesses launch or upgrade their online stores. Eligibility is also being expanded to include businesses providing services, not just goods. The additional money will help up to 4,000 more businesses.
Can bring in professional help. This will expand, obviously, our ability to use technologies, to use the internet, to do business, whether it be goods or services. And this is pretty exciting for businesses across BC.
The Premier is confident the program will be a benefit to tourism companies and other service industries to improve online bookings. The Launch Online Grant Program initially opened in February with $12 million to give businesses. After receiving more than 3,500 applications in 6 weeks, that money ran out.
Well, celebrations are underway tonight for St. Patrick's Day, but similar to last year, there are no large crowds at bars and restaurants.
No, just people wearing a lot of green shirts like us. Isabel Regem joins us live from Gastown. Isabel, no large crowds, but there are some lineups there behind you.
And then text me.
Hey guys, typically St. Patrick's Day is the busiest day of the year for the Irish Heather and Blarney Stone here in Gastown. This year, they are at max capacity, but that capacity is a pandemic capacity. We're joined here by Sean Heather, the owner of the Irish Heather. Tell us, what does this year look like versus every other year pre-pandemic?
Well, it's calm, tame. You could fire a cannonball down the center of the restaurant right now, right to the very back of the pub, and you wouldn't hit anybody. But people are spending. They're happy to be there. They're taking advantage of the 2-hour time slots. They're drinking more expensive whiskeys. Everybody's eating. So it's a different kind of vibe for sure, but it's worth it for us. And of course, we get to do the traditions that we love to do. The toasts and the customers that we've been seeing this is our 26th St. Patrick's Day. So there's people that have been coming for over 20 years and we get to see them, so that's important too.
And there are some lines, so that's positive for you compared to last year, you were telling me.
I mean, anything's better than last year, right? So yeah, we'll take this. It's a vast improvement. And if I look forward to next St. Patrick's Day, I don't think we'll be at half capacity. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And this is all positive.
And I'll just remind our viewers that last year on the eve of St. Patrick's Day, businesses were told that they'd have to close down. This year, you're allowed to serve booze until 8 p.m.
Correct.
So that's a big difference from last year. You do have a tool in your hand. What is this new tool you've been using?
My worry sense soother, I guess you call it. No, actually, in this day and age, we're not counting clickers. We're not clicking people. We're using measuring tapes now, and we're measuring feet. This is the most important thing that I have right now, because when I go back in there, I'll make sure nobody moved the table, nobody's too close to somebody else, because that's the stuff that's going to get us in big trouble.
And you already had inspections today.
We've done all right so far, no problems. So fingers crossed, I'm sure we'll get some more before the night's out.
And just quickly, are people complying? Guess that is.
Yeah, everybody's complying. There's been no problems so far. 8 o'clock, we'll see what happens. But so far, everything's been great.
Well, best of luck, and I know next year you're looking forward to raising a glass and saying cheers to the end of the pandemic. Vancouver Police says they will have an increased presence tonight, as well as WorkSafe BC. Mike, Anita.
Isabel Regem live for us tonight in Gastown. Thanks, Isabel.
Asian communities across North America, including here in BC, are voicing their anger tonight after a white gunman in Atlanta shot and killed 8 people, most of them women of Asian descent.
Deeply saddened what we see, what has happened in the U.S. And we know that we are here also in BC. We are not immune to anti-Asian hate crimes.
A 21-year-old man from Woodstock, Georgia, has taken responsibility for the shootings. Police are still investigating whether it was a hate crime. Authorities say the suspect claims his actions were not motivated by race.
It just brings home to so many Asian Americans that they are fearful of their lives and circumstances where they would otherwise feel safe in their homes and at their jobs.
While a motive is yet to be established, the Asian American community has seen an uptick in assaults during the pandemic.
And in response to those deaths here in BC, advocates say more needs to be done to protect Asian women in sex work.
As Andrea Ross tells us, many of them are facing racism and violence.
We are outraged and deeply heartbroken.
Allison Clancy was gutted to hear that women were killed at massage parlors in Atlanta yesterday. She runs a nonprofit in Vancouver offering support for migrant and immigrant sex workers. Many of them are Chinese women.
Unfortunately, this type of violence is not new to us here at SWAN.
But Clancy says it isn't easy for Asian sex workers to report the violence to police here.
there's only ever two outcomes. The first being the woman herself becomes the target of an anti-trafficking or prostitution investigation, or she is arrested, detained, and deported on an immigration violation.
From that leads to women not feeling safe to get help or call the police when needed.
And feeling forced to protect themselves from violence.
If we could just bring it out into the open and recognize it as a work sector that needs protections and laws like any other, I think that is the one hopeful thing that could make a difference.
Anti-Asian hate crimes have drastically increased in Vancouver in the past year. Other community leaders say ending it will take effort at all levels of society.
We need to acknowledge and examine the systemic racism across all institutions as well, including within the government departments, education system, healthcare, etc.
And commitments to change.
Funding support for anti-racism initiatives, not piecemeal funding, but sustainable funding to create long-term impacts.
Clancy says current legislation promotes a stereotypical racist view of Asian sex workers.
This type of violence, we believe, is a combination of misogyny, anti-sex work, and anti-migrant sentiment.
Sentiments that must be denounced.
I hope that we can all agree that when perpetrators such as the one in Atlanta can act with impunity, no one in society is safer.
Andrea Ross, CBC News, Vancouver.
A woman has died after being shot in a social housing building on Vancouver's downtown east side this morning. At 4 a.m., Vancouver police attended the Arco Hotel on Pender and Abbott. They found the woman with gunshot wounds, and she was taken to hospital where she later died. No arrests have been made, and her death marks the city's third homicide this year. Police also say they found dogs while searching the building.
And during that process, our officers located some dogs. I don't know how many. Those dogs were unattended, and therefore we did take custody of them.
No confirmation if the animals have any connection to the homicide. Anyone with information is asked to contact Vancouver Police.
The man who shot a transit police officer in Surrey 2 years ago has been sentenced to 18 years in prison. Dayon Glasgow was at the Scott Road SkyTrain station when he shot and injured Constable Joshua Harms. Glasgow was given 10 years in prison for the shooting and 8 years for a robbery that happened just days before. With time served, he'll spend almost 16 years in prison.
A 41-year-old man from Comox has died after a tragedy at a logging site near Mount Connolly between Port McNeill and Kincombe Village. Authorities are only confirming the death took place, but our colleagues at Check News have learned it was a faller who died. It's the second logging fatality in Vancouver Island area this month. On March 1st, 54-year-old faller Chris Bone died in an accident as he was cutting a tree on a hillside above Gold River. The BC Coroner Service and WorkSafe BC are investigating.
Well, the province is teaming up with the U.S. to take out a common enemy.
Invasive Asian giant hornets are raising public safety and ecological concerns ahead of their 2021 season.
As John Hernandez reports, just a handful were spotted here last year. It's why we're now being told to keep our eyes open and be careful.
The Asian giant hornet is an apex predator.
There's no shortage of ominous words to describe it, the invasive pest that famously garnered the nickname murder hornet.
Having something that could really cause you a really serious world of hurt, unbeknownst to you, living on your property, that is really what puts you in danger.
So with the next round of their fight against the invasive species on the horizon, officials on both sides of the border are ramping up surveillance. The goal, full eradication of these buzzing bullies that are known to attack honeybees.
This is particularly the case in August and onward, when these hornet nests demand a great deal of animal protein, and they are going after the raiding of honeybee colonies.
The first time these hornets were spotted in BC was in Nanaimo nearly 2 years ago, where a ground nest with more than 200 of them was found in a popular park. Experts fear what might happen if the carnivorous population takes off.
It's going to have impacts. We just don't know what those are at this time. But my policy is let's not find out, because Asian giant hornet isn't supposed to be here anyway.
But so far, it's not clear if they can actually survive in BC long term. Last year, there were no sightings on Vancouver Island, and just 6 were spotted and recovered in the Fraser Valley. That's where crews plan to put most of their traps for the 2021 season.
Maybe we will have nothing to show for at the end of 2021, which would suggest that the hornets don't like British Columbia. And I think we are just very happy with that if that's the case.
Still, with bigger numbers just south of the border, British Columbians are urged to keep their eyes open and report any sightings of these pests to the Invasive Species Council of BC. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou is back in BC Supreme Court for extradition proceedings.
As Jason Proctor reports, the defense team will spend the next 3 weeks arguing the case should be tossed for alleged violations of Meng's rights.
Their first line of attack is around the actions of RCMP and CBSA at the time of Meng's arrest, and this is the argument most legal observers think they have the best shot with. One of Meng's lawyers, Tony Pezana, gave an overview of the allegations today. He accused the RCMP and CBSA of violating Meng's rights from the start to finish, and of basically being so eager to help the FBI in their bid to extradite Meng to New York that they ignored the charter and the court process. He also said that the officers who testified about their actions at an earlier stage of proceedings were less than truthful and tried to justify their actions with explanations that bordered on the absurd. Meng is charged with fraud and conspiracy in association with allegations Huawei violated U.S. sanctions against Iran. And today, the defense began its case by saying even the provisional arrest warrant the RCMP used to arrest Meng on December 1st, 2018 was flawed because the RCMP suggested she was an escape risk with no ties to Canada when she actually owns 2 homes here, and she wasn't running from anything because the charges against her were sealed. Meng arrived in Canada on a flight from Hong Kong. The defense claims the CBSA abused its powers to question her without a lawyer, improperly seized her electronic goods, and then shared information with the RCMP, who in turn shared information with the FBI, all against the law. This part of the hearing will last 2.5 more weeks. Then after a 3-week break, we should get to a hearing on the extradition request itself. Meanwhile, as we learned today, China plans to hold simultaneous hearings for the 2 Canadians accused of spying in China in what most observers believe was retaliation for Meng's arrest. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
And as Jason just mentioned, court dates have now been set for Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, and they will take place in a matter of days. Spavor's trial is set to start Friday, Kovrig's on Monday. China alleges both men are spies, but Canadian officials, including the Prime Minister, have called their detentions arbitrary. Others believe the 2 men were arrested in retaliation for Canada's role in the Meng Wanzhou case.
And Iran has released its final report of the downing of Ukrainian Airlines Flight 752, but Canada's transportation minister is not satisfied.
There are a lot of unanswered questions remain unanswered. And it is frustrating for the families.
The Iranian report blames human error, saying the plane was misidentified as a hostile target. All 176 passengers and crew members, including 138 people with ties to Canada, died in the crash. Tomorrow, the Transportation Safety Board will deliver its own review of the Iran report. It was not bad for most of the day again, but I feel like things are about to change.
There is definitely a ... to that statement. Yes,
That's
today
I was hoping you'd pick up on that.
Punctuation is important, yeah.
It's very important. And in this case, it's everything as we get into a soggier second half to the week. But yeah, today was mainly dry. Even we did get some good blue sky breaks out here as well as the high pressure held on for one more go. Let me take you through the current temperatures, though. That was also our story today. Quite mild, 9 at YVR, a couple degrees warmer today than we were the past couple of days. 13 out towards Abbotsford and 14 in through Hope. Actually seen some almost mid-teen temperatures in through the valley. Same story out towards Port Alberni. So some warm air with that southerly flow ahead of this low pressure system. Now, it's not a direct hit over the next 24 hours. So at this point, the models aren't showing a big washout, but this low is what will push the shower showers onto the south coast for tomorrow mid-morning. But watch as I take you through one of the rapid update models. Here's this evening, cloud cover rolling in, so Thursday morning overcast, but stopping you sort of around 10 a.m. It hasn't filled in for everyone yet. I do think there is a chance that we will see the showers by mid-morning, but there's also a chance they might not move through until the afternoon. Also a chance of some thunderstorms across the island as that low gets close, but ultimately not a washout of a Thursday. But yes, definitely be prepared for the first rain we've seen in a few days, and I'll get you through to the weekend coming up.
All right, prepared we will be. Thanks, Joe. Talk again in a bit. Well, this time last year, Anita Martin was getting her catering company off the ground, and then COVID-19 happened.
Like many others, she applied for the federal CERB benefit, and she used that money to set up Mama Bear's Kitchen.
It's a community nonprofit on the edge of Vancouver's Chinatown that offers meals to those in need. Our video producer, Kevin Lee, recently had a chance to check it out.
Barbecue chicken, pizza coming for late night dinner.
I'm just trying to feed people with some good food, share my talent, and help make this world, especially in this state of pandemic, a little bit softer place to land.
Hi, I'm Anita Martin, and welcome to Mama Bear's Kitchen.
I was doing a catering company called Coast to Coast Catering, and I had committed to the space, and then it's like nobody's tendering for catering contracts. What am I going to do? We do 3 meals a day and sometimes snacks in between. And again, that depends on what our donations are. We got 6 donations yesterday. So we have some mango and pineapple and fresh fruit to add to tonight's fare. The surplus of food that goes to waste, it's just beyond any sense of compassion that I hold. So to be able to feed a often overlooked, judged community of elders, veterans, students, it's just, how can I not?
If you want, there's some fruit salad and some banana bread ready, some more coffee, just ask Elias, okay?
What our strategy is to provide alternatives to the standard food that is provided in the downtown east side, sugar heavy, preservative heavy, sometimes overdue dates, and it's still given out.
We're nutritious. She brings us fruit and whatever she thinks we need for nutrition and that. And not only that, she brings
she's personality flavorful.
Warm, loving, caring. Gives me a little bit more, brings that hope.
We've lost a very integral part to our delivery program. So we'll get another one. It's the 4th one.
Yeah, I mean, she could have just given up and packed it in and moved on, but she stayed there, doing good things.
We've seen a lot of stories like this, people really taking COVID and making some good out of it.
Absolutely.
A reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
More than 24 Canadian children are stuck in Syrian detention camps. Why the federal government says it can't help them. Coming up. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, people in Windsor, Ontario are reflecting on living the past year in a pandemic.
It's been difficult for many, but the CBC team there wanted to know what lessons people will take with them once the pandemic is finally over. Have a look.
What I learned is that the importance of connection with friends and family, intentional connection, and also to just slow down and really focus on what my purpose is in my life and my gifts and goals, and to spend time on that and not get too caught up in routine life and distractions and things like that.
We don't know when next something like this is going to happen again, so we should be ready for a rainy day like this, whatever is going to happen. And also it helps me, like, this pandemic, it helped me work on myself. Like, stuff I did not know about myself that I could do. It helped me because I had a lot of times in my hand to think and work on the stuff that I wanted to work on.
Well, I want to take with me the strength of Windsor and basically the world, how something really bad could happen to you. You can turn it into a positive, and that's basically what I believe in life. I believe Windsor has a very strong people, in Canada in general, and Ontario in the world. And it just shows that we can overcome things and take away something positive.
Because I'm in high school, there was a lot more work pushed on me then, because they had to get everything, towards us, right? But awesome, like, it really did teach me more work ethic. Plus, I also got a job during the pandemic as a janitor at a nursing home, which for someone like me who's still growing, that did help with my work ethic in the end.
It just teaches you a lot about gratitude, appreciate the people around you, appreciate your family, and, never take anything for granted. Freedom is definitely something that I value. I think I realized that the most in the last year. But yeah, just appreciate everything around you, and, everything can kind of get taken away from you in the blink of an eye, right?
It has given me the opportunity to refocus and reimagine what it is I need to do on a day-to-day basis, make plans for the futures, and be more mindful of what I do daily.
I think a lot of people are doing that, right? They step back and just ask themselves, what have I done? What can I do?
Well, and I was just saying to you the other day, we really need to appreciate this because we're never going to have this personal time with our, our household ever again, really.
A lot of personal time. The household.
Hey, you'll appreciate it one day.
No, I appreciate it now. No, it's good. It's good. Okay. Back in just a couple of seconds with more on the effort to get children out of those detention camps in Syria. Right now, enjoy a live shot at 6:26, Port of Vancouver, looking over towards the North Shore.
A 4-year-old girl who arrived in Canada this week from Syria has put a spotlight on others like her.
A former U.S. diplomat helped get her out of a detention camp and the country.
But as Margaret Evans tells us, there are at least 23 more Canadian children in that camp and others.
On the tattered edges of a region torn by conflict, the tattered edges of a detention camp for the families of ISIS militants, including Canadian women and their children. News here that one of those mothers has managed to send her daughter to freedom in Canada is still making the rounds, leaving in its wake some complicated emotions.
I'm really happy. I'm really happy that she made it.
This Western Canadian mother says she couldn't make the same decision. We've altered her voice at her request.
I don't think I can bear it, without my children,
Oh, the Canadians we met asked for anonymity. They know not everyone in Canada views their situation with sympathy, but they also feel abandoned by their government. One mother, 25 now and 19 when she left Canada, says she couldn't survive here without her children.
I'm like, the only reason here I'm still coping and still going on with my day every day is because of them.
We spoke to the mother of the little girl now back in Canada. She didn't want to speak to us on camera because she wants to protect the identity of her daughter, but she did tell us just how difficult it was to make that decision. She also said some of the other Canadian mothers here in the detention camp are worried that if they do manage to get their children out, the Canadian government will forget the mothers left behind. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Northeastern Syria.
And the federal government says its hands are tied when it comes to repatriating Canadian children from those Syrian detention camps.
As Karina Roman reports, this is despite pleas from the children's mothers and human rights activists who say Ottawa is not doing enough to help them.
Canadian children in Syrian detention camps. Many there with their mothers who are alleged ISIS supporters. Others are orphans made so by the 10-year civil war in the country. But the federal government has no plan to proactively repatriate the children back to Canada. The reason? It's difficult to do when Canada does not have diplomatic relations with Syria.
We are looking at ways how we can provide consular assistance to those Canadians who are there. But you want to understand we need to balance that with our duty to protect the health and safety of our own consular officials.
To date, 2 Canadian children have been repatriated. One was an orphan. The other, a 4-year-old sent by her mother to relatives in Canada. It was extended families who organized their extraction. The federal government helped with the travel documents only.
And we've said it, we could do it in that particular case because the circumstances were exceptional. And I think we have demonstrated compassion, and we will continue. And there's always ways where we're trying to support Canadians who might be still in Syria.
But critics say that is no plan at all.
Well, I think they don't want to be open to the criticism that has been laid perhaps by the Conservatives and by others who are saying that you can't bring these so-called terrorists back to Canada.
Harris says Canada can bring back the children and find a way to hold their parents to account for their alleged crimes. After all, several European countries, as well as the U.S., have done so.
We can't leave them there to languish. They're not in a camp, they're in a prison. And we've got children in prison, and we've got mothers in prison, and we've got families in prison, and they're going to be there languishing indefinitely if Canada doesn't do something. And I think it's wrong for us to do that.
Human rights groups say Canada has a legal and moral obligation to do something. But the government continues to say without proper consular relations with Syria, its hands are tied. And so it would seem Canadian children will continue to languish in Syrian detention centres. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, farmers in India have been relentless. For weeks, they've been protesting against government laws they say strip them of their livelihoods.
But hidden behind the demonstrations is another crisis, decades in the making. And as Salima Shivji explains, it comes with devastating consequences for farmers' families.
Kiran Kaur and her brother are as close as 2 siblings can be. These 3 acres are what bind them together in hardship and loss. Wheat and cotton fields that yield little profit. It's where their father toiled and where he took his own life. These 3 acres where as a child, Kiran would rush to see her father every day after school.
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਸੀਗਾ 2016 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 17 ਤੱਕ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਹੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਤਾ.
It was Amrit, only 15 at the time, who found his father and desperately tried to save him. The burden of tending to the farm now falls on his shoulders. This is not the life he wanted. I was forced into this, he says. My first choice was to join the army. Kiran's father was one of her best friends, her confidant, but he kept secret the crippling debt he was struggling to manage from everyone. Things were falling apart, but I never thought this would hit us, Kiran's mother says. And yet the decades-long suicide crisis gripping India's farmers has hit Kiran's extended family hard. 3 brothers out of 4 killed themselves, leaving behind 3 widows. Nearly every village here is a hotspot, the suicide crisis inescapable. Farmers own meager plots of land, and for the vast majority, the costs far outweigh the gains. Taking your life with the pesticide sulfus is so common, this expert on agrarian distress says the word has become linguistic shorthand for suicide.
We roughly have, some 12,000 farmers and rural workers committing suicide every year.
An unfathomable number, some 30 people a day in a country where trying to kill yourself is illegal. And the pandemic has only deepened the crisis.
Your cost of production has gone up, and then you're being made to compete with the world. And that has squeezed incomes of farmers so much that they're basically being forced to commit suicide.
forced by spiraling debt, a system that's broken, and no other job options. It's why tens of thousands of India's farmers are camped out in protest against the government's new farm laws that they say will further push them into ruin. Kiran knows that anguish all too well. Her grief drove her to activism. She regularly makes the rounds here, this time speaking with a group of widows from another hard-hit village in Punjab. The tone is light, the topic serious. They joke that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi need only come talk to them to understand the life of a farmer.
गवर्नमेंट वालों उन्हां नूं कोई मतलब उन्हां दी सुनी नहीं जांदी हैगी गी ਉਹ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵਿਡੋਜ਼ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਨਾਰਮਲੀ ਮਿਲਦੀਆਂ ਨੇਗੀਆਂ ਹੈ ਨਾ
She is listening, traveling to villages all over her home state, explaining to widows their rights. This woman lost her husband 2 years ago. Paying the bills is a constant struggle, and her grandchildren feel the effects. For Kiran, it brings home why she's here, doing what she thinks her father would have wanted.
ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਉਭਾਰਨਾ ਹੈ
To stop others from feeling lost with no other options out. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mansa, Punjab.
Growing fears tonight in a community already on edge. Just ahead, we look at the possible motive behind a killing spree that's left 8 women dead in Atlanta.
For sale in Vancouver, one huge tract of prime real estate last used as a site of Expo 86. The value about $300 million. The land is being sold off in one piece by a crown agency of the British Columbia government. The high price means there have been very few bidders, and many people are unhappy with the way the entire sale is being handled. Keith Bogue reports.
Cranes have yet to finish stripping the last remnants of Expo 86 from the site, cleaning up what is among the most desirable vacant lots in North America. An undeveloped area roughly equivalent to 80 city blocks, in the heart of Vancouver and right on the waterfront. The province owns the land, but the government has decided it will sell all of it this spring to a single developer. There are bidders, but the government won't say how many or who they are.
It's a very competitive game, and it just can't be done in the limelight.
It's now widely believed only 2 bidders are in the running. One is Jack Poole, head of a company set up by a Bell Canada subsidiary specifically to bid on the Expo site. The other is believed to be Concord Pacific, owned by Hong Kong billionaire Li Ka-shing, the man currently involved in maneuvers to take over Texaco. Whoever wins will likely pay about $300 million for the property.
I'm disappointed that we weren't given an opportunity.
Some local developers say they've been shut out of the bidding and they aren't sure why.
We received a phone call one day saying, we don't think you're going to get the site, and that was about it. There was no explanation as to who or why your bid was deficient.
After it's sold, the process will be very clearly explained, and I've tried to explain up to this point the process, and I think that's been very clear.
The organization which speaks for local realtors says it hasn't been clear, has officially complained about the size and secrecy of the sale.
It's a quick fix for money to put into the budget this year.
The real estate board says the government will lose as much as $100 million by not dividing the property to sell in smaller parcels.
Go down and try and find some information out. And they say, well, to put it into zoning it into smaller enclaves isn't our mandate. Well, I say change the mandate.
City Hall has been criticized for not taking a more active role in what's going on, but the mayor says he's not worried.
If we wait to know the specifics of every single thing that's going to happen there, nothing is going to happen there.
Some believe a buyer for the site has already been agreed upon. The government says only that it will tell all in 5 or 6 weeks. Keith Bogue, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that's the National for Thursday, March 17th. For CBC News, I'm Knowlton Nash. We'll have regional news later. Now, the Journal.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
As more and more people are vaccinated, hundreds of thousands already, with hundreds of thousands more to come, I think we will see relaxing.
Nearly 450,000 British Columbians have now been vaccinated against COVID-19. The Premier says it's possible rules could be eased for some people who've gotten the shot, but he's not saying when or which restrictions could change. For now, if you're immunized, you must follow the same regulations as everyone else.
With what's going on right now, I think it's just really apparent that it has been an issue for a very long time.
Local advocates say Canada must do more to protect Asian women in sex work. Yesterday, 8 people were killed, 6 of them Asian women, when a gunman opened fire at 3 massage parlors in Atlanta. Advocates say Asian sex workers here face racism and violence and are lacking protection.
And as we saw earlier tonight, those shootings in Atlanta brought anguish to many Asians across North America, including those here in BC. Katie Simpson has more tonight about the motives that led to the attack.
8-month-old Mia will grow up without her mother. Delana Yan died in the shooting rampage. She also leaves behind a 13-year-old son, a husband, and devastated parents.
This is our son. Just pray for my family. Pray that we can get through this.
Police say 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long admitted to being responsible for the killings at 3 separate spas that left 8 dead. 7 of the victims are women. 6 are of Asian descent.
A crime against any community is a crime against us all.
Police say they are not classifying this right now as a hate crime because the suspect allegedly told them this wasn't about race.
He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate.
But the shootings have further fueled fears in Asian American communities about racially motivated attacks, so much so that police in New York City stepped up patrols in some neighborhoods as a precaution.
I do want to say to our Asian American community that we stand with you and understand how this has frightened and shocked and outraged all people.
I don't think that the specific motivations of this case matter when it comes to the pain that it has caused in this community and the larger context of what has been happening to Asians in America over the past year.
Anti-Asian hate crimes have spiked in the pandemic. For many, the combination of racism and misogyny in this case cannot be ignored.
I call it a racist attack, of course, because nothing can be separated from the dynamics of race here and of gender here.
Police say this could have been even worse. The suspect was headed to Florida when he was arrested, with plans, allegedly, to carry out more attacks. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
A new harassment policy by the Senate is being criticized tonight.
It's meant to address allegations of bullying and abuse.
But as John Paul Tasker reports, some worry it will only shield abusers from public scrutiny and deter victims from coming forward.
At least one senator says the Red Chamber's new harassment policy may be a gift for would-be abusers. Manitoba Senator Mary Lou McPhedran says the new directive will shield wayward senators and staff from public scrutiny. Complainants must now sign non-disclosure agreements if they want their claims to be probed by a newly appointed independent investigator. Forced into total silence about their claims and barred from speaking to the press, McPhedran says the public may never know if a senator is facing allegations of abuse.
Now, with this new policy, everyone's locked down. Everyone's shut up. If you're going to engage in this process, you are immediately gagged, and you're gagged for the duration of the process.
It's not just the new gag orders that have some parliamentarians concerned. Former Senator Lillian Dick is also worried the new policy does nothing about harassment inflicted on senators. A Cree woman from Saskatchewan, Dick says she was routinely subjected to abuse from her peers.
I have suffered bullying, intense bullying, throughout my career, so that I knew how to deal with it, and I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to be an expert in protection. There should be rules that prohibit bullying and harassment as unethical conduct
Dick says her pleas for a change have gone unanswered. She was told parliamentary privilege essentially allows members to do and say just about anything they want in the chamber.
Okay, well, what about my parliamentary privilege? What about my privilege to perform my duties as a senator unobstructed by the bullies in the group? I should be allowed to do my work without interference.
The senator that chairs the subcommittee that drafted the new directive says she's proud of the policy, predicting it will save staff from abuse. She said all the secrecy is to protect complainants from prying eyes.
Confidentiality of the process is key for both the employees and every party. It's part of fairness and natural justice and due process.
The new harassment policy is expected to take effect before summer. John Paul Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, as we inch closer to the end of winter, spring floods are on the horizon. After the break, a new tool to help us better predict how bad things could get here in BC.
And at 6:45, a live shot of Science World tonight. It's nice to see it light out this late. For the most part, another beautiful day on the south coast, a bit more cloud, but hey, can't complain. Tomorrow, though, another story. Get ready for the rain. Johanna has the full forecast coming up.
I had a brand new album ready for release that came out March 9th. You know, I had a tour out west booked. I had shows in Southern Ontario booked for, you know, through end of March and April. You know, so...
Get this show on the road.
Well, this song is a freedom song. I'm asking my neighbors to sing along. Your eyes on that prize. Hold on. What has been great is March 19th we started singing on the street. So unlike so many of my friends, other musicians, every night you can go out and play 2 songs, you know, sing with people.
Hey, hey, bud, come on down. Come on, bring your friends on down.
Not a single night has gone by that a concert has been missed. So, you know, it's been 7:20 and we're wondering if anybody's going to put something together. There hasn't been a single night that's gone by that someone hasn't shown up, because I think we've all recognized that it's something we look forward to every day, and we need it to keep going.
Well, this still light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this still light of mine, you know I'm gonna let it shine.
People look forward to it, and people come out in the snow, in the wind, in the rain, and people just keep coming because there's something about, you know, human contact in a pandemic, which is really necessary.
I picked up a few instruments, and that's been really social and really healthy, and that's the type of thing that you can do from a distance, you know, in your yard if you're fortunate to have that space. But also it's something that I can bring with me beyond this year. Like once the pandemic ends and lockdown is over, these are relationships and skills and just fun things that I can bring with me wherever I go, which is really nice to have.
Never before have I spent Christmas Eve with neighbors instead of family. And we were here on the street, and one of the things that happened was this impromptu snowball fight, which was so funny and so like old-fashioned. It felt like, you know, a Christmas Eve from like before the internet. It was really cool, really special.
Well, it can take a lot for joggers at this time of year to bear the brisk cold weather.
But a runner from Quebec took it to the next level.
Good job!
Kareem El Hayani completed a half marathon earlier this month, and not only did he do it on frozen Lac Beauport in Quebec, he did it barefoot and in what might be a record time.
Wow, El Hayani, who grew up in sunny Spain, moved to Quebec a few years ago. He says he gets through Canadian winters by staying active. He's still waiting to hear back from Guinness World Record officials about the feat. In the meantime, he says he's already been back on the ice again.
Oh, yeah.
What that freezer burn on the feet?
Yeah, exactly. No shirt, no shoes, no nothing. Okay, let's move from the ice to the snowpack and the flooding that invariably comes from that. Johanna's here with it. Joe, a new kind of model that may help us better predict the season ahead?
Yeah, that's right. And as we get closer to the freshet season across BC, the spring runoff is so dependent on the snowpack we have in the mountains. And while we do have estimates, new researchers out of the University of Saskatchewan working with scientists around the world and scientists out of UNBC here in British Columbia honed a model to help us predict how much snowpack we have. First of all, take a listen to the lead author on why it's so hard to get this kind of estimate.
Field work and is extremely important to get valuable measurements, but it's often restricted to like point measurements, where you have like either an observer is going out in the field collecting manual samplings, or you could have an automatic station that would report snow data on a daily basis, but they are still restricted to some area. Sometimes use satellite observation that will provide valuable information. If you are lucky and rich, you can have an airplane flying, but that's something that you can't necessarily afford that on very large region and at a sufficient spatial temporal scale.
So we have a lot of different ways to get point measurements, as he says, and you're looking at the team out of UNBC taking those point measurements to compare to the model that they created. So they actually took this model that's in existence in Saskatchewan and then added all these layers, like how the wind blows the tops of mountains, avalanche redistribution of the snow, and the shadows that the mountains create. And we're able to create this highly accurate model. It was only on a 1,000 square kilometer section of the Southern Rockies, but they're hoping to expand it. And the more we know about how much snow is in our mountains, the better we're able to prepare for our spring flooding, but also water management and those one-off flooding events that we do see more and more with climate change. So I will keep you posted on that. We'll probably get to use it here in British Columbia in the next couple of years. Speaking of spring right around the corner, take a look at the temperatures. I know some of you have been asking me, are we done with the frost yet? And while, as I take you through the overnight temperatures, we're not expected to dip close to the freezing mark through tonight or the weekend. In fact, quite a mild evening. You can see temperatures staying up around 5, 6, 7 with that southerly flow. I do see some frost possibly for next week. So not quite done with the winter-like conditions. A low pressure, as I mentioned earlier, is our story. It won't get across to the interior until tomorrow evening. So you get by with a mainly sunny day. Kelowna looking at a 14 and a 16 up towards Kamloops, a good 5 to 6 degrees above seasonal. Last 30-year average seasonal anyway. Lots of rain in through Prince Rupert. That is where the bullseye of that first low continues to hit. The low, as I mentioned, isn't moving straight inland. It's sort of sliding up the coast, where that southerly flow is pushing the rain in towards us. Starting mid-morning for Metro Vancouver, it's not a washout, but be prepared for a soggier Thursday. And as a second low follows the track of the first, a soggier Friday as well. Seeing those warm temperatures right across to the Kootenays tomorrow. And we get a 12 in our forecast. I think we'll at least hit the double digits for most of Metro Vancouver. It's not a straight washout through Thursday and Friday. As I mentioned, we're sort of getting these bands of rain moving in from the southwest. And Saturday afternoon, I am hopeful that we might see a few breaks in the sky before one more system moves in for Sunday. And then we're back to the sunshine for early next week. Don't you love it when the rain times out just in time for the weekend?
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to file a protest. Don't like that Sunday, Monday pattern. Not at all. All right.
Okay, I'll be accepting
Work on
complaint.
that. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, after showing you how Iranians mark the beginning of Nowruz, many of our viewers shared what they are doing to celebrate Persian New Year. Up next, we'll take a look at some of the festivities.
Well, it actually started as an idea I had during this past winter break as I was reminiscing on 2020 and all the events that had taken place and how it had impacted the Black community and especially the Black youth. So many things happened the past year, and I think it was also traumatizing to some Black youth seeing all that racially based violence.
I feel like I was numb to it to a point, but then this time it was really in my face. And maybe I was also old enough to put everything into perspective, but it definitely changed a lot for me.
When school returned in January, Kaya Busby decided to form the group Black Futures Lab, quickly recruiting her friend Hire Dugasa. They wanted to create a more inclusive environment for Black students at Mount Carmel by educating on Black history and the Black experience, and providing a safe space for discussion. 80 students and staff signed up to join in the first week. The group has been holding weekly virtual meetings since.
What are some of the topics that you guys touch on and talk about and discuss?
Yeah, so we've been talking about intergenerational trauma. We were watching a very interesting video about post-traumatic slave syndrome. We're debunking, is race real, tough topics like that. To hear these different opinions, it helps you formulate what does it mean to be Black? What is your Black identity? So having these discussions have really, really been beneficial for me.
We also have our Instagram page, which is our biggest form of community outreach. We just finished our Celebrating Black History Month series, which included daily video presentations and posts about either historical milestones of the Black community or influential Black figures. And we also, over the past couple weeks, have allowed our students to conduct interviews with several influential Black Canadians, including Professor George Day, Hal Johnson, Trey Armstrong, the Honorable Jean Augustine, and Michael Lee Chin. And we also had an open discussion with the award-winning author Ian Williams.
And beginning next year, the school will be providing a new grade 11 course called The History of Black People in Canada, the result of a campaign by group member Jaden Dill.
It really hit me about a year ago when I was looking back on my high school experience, and I realized that I wasn't taught one thing about Black history.
For more people to understand the Black community, definitely will raise tolerance and inclusivity in our school.
I feel like the dialogue that we talk about is usually limited to just February and Black History Month. And what we talk about is usually the negative, slavery and things, colonialism, things like that. But it's important for Black students and really all people to realize that Blackness is much more than that.
They say it's also been encouraging to see students from all races and backgrounds join them in their fight.
One of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So injustice towards Black people or people of color is a threat to human rights. So this fight for justice, equality, and equity involves all of us.
Last night, we told you about Scarlet Wednesday, a fire jumping celebration used to mark the start of Nowruz, the Persian New Year.
Our social media team put out a call to CBC viewers to show us how you adapted the festival for the pandemic.
And you delivered. Here's a look at some of the videos. Everyone finding ways to adapt. I particularly like the dog jumping over the candle.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's still fun for sure. It's fun, sort of, tonight with St.
I don't know where you're going with it.
Well, St. Patrick's Day. Work
Yes.
with me now, Anita.
Okay.
Come now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You going out for a green beer?
No, I'm going home. That's all. That's it for me. And that's it for us. Thanks for watching. Dan's here. Oh, sorry, not Dan. Isabel's going to be here at 11 o'clock after the National. There we go, St. Patrick's Day.
That's it for today. Have a good night.
Happy St. Patrick's Day as we ride on out of here.